Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Andrew Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion. A poetry discussion which will take place in two separate playlists here on the channel. The first, obviously, being the poetry discussion playlist, but the second being the playlist in celebration of National Poetry Month 2021, where we are doing a poetry discussion every day of the month. So I'm just going to jump into things. This poem comes to us from Allen Ginsberg. It is titled "A Supermarket in California." It reads as such. What thoughts I have of you tonight, Walt Whitman, for I walked down the side streets under the trees with a headache of self-conscious looking at the full moon. In my hungry fatigue and shopping for images, I went into the neon fruit supermarket dreaming of your enumerations. What peaches, what penumbras, whole families shopping at night, aisles full of husbands, wives in the avocados, babies in the tomatoes, and you, Garcia Lorca, what were you doing down by the watermelons? I saw you, Walt Whitman, childless, lonely old grubber, poking among the meats in the refrigerator and eyeing the grocery boys. I heard you asking questions of each. Who killed the pork chops? What price bananas? Are you my angel? I wandered in and out of the brilliant stacks of cans following you, and followed my imagination by the store detective. We strode down the open corridors together in our solitary fancy, tasting artichokes, possessing every frozen delicacy, and never passing the cashier. Where are we going, Walt Whitman? The doors close in an hour. Which way does your beard point tonight? I touch your book and dream of our odyssey in the supermarket and feel absurd. Will we walk all night through solitary streets? The trees add shade to shade, lights out in the houses. We'll both be lonely. Will we stroll dreaming of the lost America of love past blue automobiles and driveways, home to our silent cottage? Ah, dear father, graybeard, lonely old courage teacher, what America did you have when Sharon quit poling his ferry and you got out on a smoking bank and stood watching the boat disappear on the black waters of Leith? So I think what we have here is a really weird poem that comes to us from Allen Ginsberg, who was every bit as strange as perhaps Walt Whitman. But I think what is being commented on is the fruits of the labors of capitalism, the fruits of the labors of commercialism, and whether or not those fruits are hollow to the American dream as presented, the American ideal as presented, American originality as presented through Walt Whitman. We have the speaker here following Whitman through a supermarket which would seem obscene to someone visiting. This poem was dated Berkeley 1955. To someone visiting Berkeley 1955 from Whitman's time, that very supermarket would seem obscene. It would be very strange. I didn't notice a time of the year. It would make a bit of difference to me if I could notice a time of year, but I don't notice a time of year. That's okay. If this is anywhere months away from harvest, this would certainly seem obscene to someone from Walt Whitman's time. So, in this struggle to rationalize the excesses of his day, Allen Ginsberg is stalking Walt Whitman. And did you notice it? Where is it here? We strode down the open corridors together, fancy tasting artichokes, possessing every frozen delicacy, and never passing the cashier. Wandering through the supermarket, eating food, never intending to pay for it, while sort of musing on the hollowness of capitalism, on the hollowness of commercialism, which has brought all of these fruits, these, I guess, free fruits, to the lips of Allen Ginsberg. Does he have a point? Does he have a point? Is this America, the America represented here, the commercialist, capitalist mecca of the world, is this a soul-killing adventure? Does the ease with which Allen Ginsberg's speaker in this poem consume anything that he desires take away from the struggle which is necessary, perhaps, to the creative spirit, to the need for people to create and innovate? There is no reason for Allen Ginsberg to lay down and write his silly little poem stalking Walt Whitman through the aisles of the supermarket when all he would have to do is get a 9-to-5 part-time job doing anything with no skills required, on-the-job training, in order to feed himself. Whereas Walt Whitman not only had to write poetry, had to completely transform poetry, had to create the American voice, had to create an entire ambiance around the artist that was Walt Whitman, had to create an entire persona. And still, I mean, how many artists do this, are successful, and end up struggling financially, or struggling financially at least through part of their life? And the big thing to me, we have Ginsberg writing this poem about Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman rose to the heights of poetry, what poetry can do for an artist. I wonder if there is some commentary here on the... So Emily Dickinson referred to publication as the auction of the mind of man. Is the auction of the mind of man particularly dire in the American experiment? Is the auction of the mind of man particularly art-killing in the commercialist, consumerist, capitalist, again, mecca of the world of the United States? Is there a special type of dunce put on that type of art? I saw an interview with Kurt Vonnegut one time. I'm probably misremembering this. I'm probably mistelling this. But the gist is here. Kurt Vonnegut was on a tour for one of his books, and he was making appearances on television shows and whatnot. And he had a taxi driver. And I don't think the taxi driver was from the United States. But the taxi driver said to him, the problem with Americans is that all of the art they consume is in advertisements. And Kurt Vonnegut said, what are you talking about? Yeah, that's not true. No. Think about it. Most of the music you hear on a daily basis is music in a commercial. At that time, a lot of the reading that someone would do would be the reading. Most people don't read, right? So the reading that they do is flipping through a magazine, looking at the pictures, and stopping on a Winston-Salem ad and reading the words therein. Most of the photography that they admire is photography for an advertisement. A billboard, a nice picture on a billboard. Most of the acting that they see, you got to think this is way back when, so you didn't have all of the streaming services. If you went home and you turned on the TV, odds are it was the news because it was one of 3 channels. Most of the acting that they saw was acting in commercials during commercial breaks. And he said that's what's wrong with America. That's what's wrong with American art. Is that most of the art that you consume is meant to sell you something, not express something. Which is strange because in this poem, our speaker and our subject, Walt Whitman, I think, is referenced as eating things in the supermarket as well as the speaker, while our speaker is consuming Walt Whitman's poetry. This seems to be, where is it here? I touch your book and dream of our odyssey in the supermarket and feel absurd. This seems to be one of these meta poems where I'm reading your poetry while dreaming of you. One of these things, these types of things, where what is happening is not happening. It's a daydream while I'm doing something else. That doing something else in this case is reading Walt Whitman. So our speaker here is consuming on several levels. What does this mean? Has consumerism ruined American poetry? Has capitalism ruined the American artistic scene? Has consumerism, capitalism, what was the other one I was talking about? Has that ruined the way that we, whichever one it was one of the big C's, consumerism, capitalism, I don't remember. Has it ruined the way that we perceive art? I don't know. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. Again, normally on my channel I have new videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Mondays are for poetry, but this month, every day is for poetry. I have poetry on the channel every day, so make sure you tune back in for poetry. And subscribe if you're not.